Here we go. It's week 2 of the NHL season, and it is time for the week 2 power rankings. Check in every Friday for the latest power rankings for that week. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe as well. Let's get right into week 2's power rankings. So, to start things off, taking a look at the Metropolitan Division, as we usually start off, taking a look at number 8, who was in number 8 last week, did not move, is the Columbus Blue Jackets. They are 1-2-0 on the season, and this week they were 1-0. So they were good this week. Unfortunately, not good enough to move up. Their one game that they had this week, again, it's a shorter week, but I plan on doing these videos every Friday moving forward. So this is a shorter week, but moving forward they will be on Fridays. Anyway, back to the game. For the Blue Jackets, they won 4-3 over the Buffalo Sabres in overtime. Definitely seeing, again, the sample size is very small for the Blue Jackets. Only played 3 games so far. They did get a win this week, so hopefully they're going to start going in the right direction. They beat a pretty good Buffalo team when we get to them in the Atlantic Division. So a solid victory there for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Again, it's still early. Hopefully they can get things figured out. They have such a great group on the back end there. And the goaltending situation is going to be interesting. They keep giving up some goals, but, what are you going to do? It's a transition, and as the guys start getting together and getting their feet wet, ready for the season, hopefully things will start falling into place for the Blue Jackets. So the New Jersey Devils are number 7. They did not move up or down either, so they stay at number 7 this week. 0-2-2 to start the season for the New Jersey Devils. Probably could have put them in last place here. Probably could have moved Columbus and New Jersey, but the thing is, I'm giving the Devils a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. They're 0-1-1 this week. They lost to the Edmonton Oilers in past 60 minutes in a shootout loss, as well as a shootout loss to the Winnipeg Jets, who were supposed to be a pretty good team. So they do have 2 overtime losses, which in a losing streak, it does help you out. It's basically the same amount of points as a win. So, it's, the same record as 1-2, just 0-2-2. So, at the end of the day, for the Devils, things are not clicking perfectly. We saw Corey Schneider go down with that injury earlier in the season, earlier in the week. So, hopefully he's able to recover. The Devils are definitely interesting, though. They lose 4-0 to the Philadelphia Flyers earlier this week, as well as a 4-3 loss to the Edmonton Oilers last night, who are extremely hot. So again, that's a pretty good team there in Edmonton. They were down 3-2. They came back, made it 3-3. They were able to sneak a point out of that game. So, against a good Edmonton team that's played pretty well in the Metro Division, they fared a little bit better than Winnipeg, but nonetheless, 0-1-1 on the week, so they still have not found that victory that they were hoping to find. They were up 4-0 against Winnipeg, just a reminder. But at the end of the day, I think the Devils are okay. It's not time to panic just yet. If they have one win or no wins at the end of next week's, by the next week power rankings, I'd be more concerned, but as of right now, it's still too early on the New Jersey Devils. Okay, so at number 6, again, no change here. We have the Philadelphia Flyers, who are 2-0-0 this season, 1-0 this week. A 4-0 victory over the aforementioned New Jersey Devils. So a good week for the Philadelphia Flyers. The only reason I couldn't really move them up, I probably could have moved them ahead of the team in front, at number 5. But there's not much of a sample size, and the Devils, being where they are, how impressive is that victory over the Devils? I'm not too sure. So it was hard to move up the Philadelphia Flyers this week. If Nolan Patrick hopefully comes back in, a good game by the goaltending there in Philadelphia in that 4-0 win. Carter Hart has looked great for the Flyers, and hopefully they just keep rolling. Number 5, moving no placement here. I don't know why I said that, but not moving is number 5, the New York Islanders at number 5, 1-2-0 to start the season here. 0-1-0 this week. So they have the loss that Edmonton lost, a 5-2 loss to the Oilers. This was pretty concerning, to say the least. Semyon Varlamov gets, kicked out of the crease, and Thomas Greiss goes in. James Neal puts up, a couple of goals, puts up 4 goals, gets a hat trick, and then another one after. Definitely a tough game for Varlamov. Some of those shots by Neal, no discredit to James Neal. I'm very happy that he's playing well, but I don't know what's going on with Varlamov. Some of those shots just kind of went right through him. Definitely a little bit concerning for the Islanders here. Noah Dobson did play in his first NHL game. He did get an assist, so that was nice to see. But at the end of the day, no victory for the Islanders this week. And then at number 4, staying the same, we have the Pittsburgh Penguins, who are 2-2-0 and 1-1-0 this week. So not too bad, not too great of a week for the Pittsburgh Penguins. They lost to the Winnipeg Jets 4-1, and they beat the Anaheim Ducks, who seemed pretty hot out of the gate coming into Pittsburgh 3-0. The Pittsburgh Penguins hand the Anaheim Ducks their first loss of the season by a score of 2-1. Pittsburgh has a lot of injuries. Gino Malkin, Galchenyuk, and plenty of other guys are out with injury. It's a little bit concerning for Pittsburgh. There may be a little bit of a regression. It depends on how Philly looks. If Columbus can maybe get a couple of wins this week, we may see Pittsburgh move down. But as of right now, they're able to keep things in check. They have a good foundation on that roster, and they're able to find ways to win, even when it becomes fairly difficult with the way the roster is. All right, so here's our one change here in the Metro. At number 3, moving down a spot from last week, from number 2 to number 3, is the Washington Capitals. So Capitals were 2-1-2 this over the start of this season. 0-1-1 this week. So not a great week for the Washington Capitals. A 4-3 overtime loss to the Dallas Stars and a 6-5 loss to the Nashville Predators. There's something glaring there. They've given up 10 goals in 2 games, so that's a little bit concerning for the Washington Capitals. They're giving up an awful lot of goals, and you just kind of wonder what's going on with Holtby and the Capitals. They definitely have some different pieces on the back end. They moved a couple of guys here and there. They brought in Gudas. This is a very different looking team here in Washington, but again, you can't really do that. The expectations were very high for the Capitals coming into this season, and they moved down a spot in this week's rankings. Taking a look at number 2, moving up from 3 to 2, are the New York Rangers. Just sitting on their couch and watching games, they find a way to move up in this week's power rankings. They're 2-0-0 on the season, and they haven't played any games. Now, some people may argue, well, Philadelphia has the same record. Why aren't they there? I don't know. Maybe I have a bias here. I'm not even a Ranger fan. I'm an Islander fan, a diehard Islander fan. But the Flyers, what concerns me about the Flyers is I don't know how good that offense is going to be this year. And even that defense is a little bit spotty. We saw some guys, 2 years ago really come out of the gate and play well, like Gostisbehere, Provorov. And we saw a little bit of a regression of that last season. Was Niskanen, who they brought in, is that going to be an upgrade? I don't know. I'm just a little bit more spotty on the Philadelphia Flyers, and as well as Carter Hart. I mean, Carter Hart has played well, but we just don't know how good he's going to be, longer term. The Rangers have a very solid offense. They really loaded up, on the offensive side. They brought in Jacob Trouba, and Henrik Lundqvist is hoping for a resurgence this season. And I think he has some people to prove wrong after how things went last year. Okay. And then number 1, not moving this week, is the Carolina Hurricanes, who hold the flag at the top of the Metropolitan Division in Week 2. 4-0-0 to start the season, 1-0-0 this week, a 6-3 win over the Florida Panthers. A very solid start to the season here for the Carolina Hurricanes. They beat the Tampa Bay Lightning pretty well last week as well. So this is a good hockey team in Carolina. That defense is looking extremely good. The goaltending looks fairly solid as well. I was a little bit concerned about that. It seems a little bit suspect. We'll see how long it holds up. But Rod Brind'Amour and the Carolina Hurricanes are doing very well this week and to start this season here in week 2. So just to recap, at number 8, the Columbus Blue Jackets, who did not move this week. Number 7, the New Jersey Devils, who did not move this week. Number 6, the Philadelphia Flyers, is becoming a theme. They did not move this week. The New York Islanders stayed at number 5. The Pittsburgh Penguins stayed at number 4. The Washington Capitals moved from 2 to 3. And the New York Rangers moved up to number 2. The Carolina Hurricanes hold down the top spot in the Metropolitan Division. All right, so taking a look at the Atlantic Division here in week 2. There was a little bit of movement, not anything too crazy considering the short week, but there is a little bit of movement, and we'll talk about that. So, the no movement at number 8, and this probably isn't going to be much of a surprise to anybody, is the Ottawa Senators at number 8, 0-3-0 to start the season, and 0-1 this week. A 6-4 loss at the hands of the St. Louis Blues when St. Louis came into Eastern Canada this week. They were a victim of the Blues. Just not much going the way of the Ottawa Senators. I noticed last week Craig Anderson just didn't look too great, and I don't really know the goaltending situation behind Craig Anderson, who would even be filling in behind him. I believe it's Anders Nilsson, who, he could be a fairly good goaltender. He's been bouncing around the NHL recently, so you really don't know what you have in him. And he ended the season pretty well with the Ottawa Senators, but, considering teams were resting a lot of their superstars getting ready for the playoffs, we don't really know how real Anders Nilsson is. Again, not a great start. 6 goals against the Blues. It's not a great look for Ottawa to start the year. You had that, coming out party for Mika Zibanejad earlier last week. A former player just kind of stabbing you right in the heart. Not a great look for Ottawa. Hopefully they could find a way to get that first victory, just to get that out of the way, and you don't have a Arizona Coyotes situation where you're 10 or 15 games in and you are yet to get a victory. So hopefully they get that done sooner rather than later. Taking a look at number 7, no movement here. We have the Florida Panthers, 1-2-0 on the season and 0-1 this week. They fell victim to those Carolina Hurricanes, 6-3. This is a team that's, I think they have to get their feet wet. They have to figure out, who fits well in the system. Joel Quenneville is an unbelievable coach. I think once he gets this team figured out, he figures out the room, he's going to have a good grip on this team. There's some really good players there. Anton Strowman coming in, Sergei Bobrovsky, some depth guys like Brett Connolly and Noah Cherry. So hopefully things work out, but they have to wait for that to start getting going. At number 6, so we had a little bit of movement. This is our first movement piece. Moving from 3 to 6, so a pretty big fallback here is the Montreal Canadiens, who are 1-1 on the season, 0-1-1 this week. So not a great week here for the Canadiens. The Buffalo Sabres beat them up 5-4, an overtime loss. And then the Detroit Red Wings, another divisional opponent, 4-3 win there for the Detroit Red Wings. So 2 losses this week, divisional losses as well here for the Montreal Canadiens. Not a great week. They gave up some goals, gave up 9 goals this week. So not a great look for the Canadiens. I was talking so highly about Carey Price last week, and they're making me eat my words on that one. So unfortunately, hopefully things get better for Montreal. We did have that one game that they had against Toronto, so that's why they moved up so high. Maybe they were a little bit higher than they should have been, and it kind of leveled out a little bit this week. Taking a look at number 5, a team that moved up a spot, thanks to the Montreal Canadiens, is the Tampa Bay Lightning. 2-1-1 on the season, 1-0-1 this week. Their big victory coming this week, a 7-3 win over the Toronto Maple Leafs, so a solid win for the Tampa Bay Lightning in Toronto. Nonetheless, a very good showing by Braden Point. His coming out party, his first game back, showing no signs of rust in the offseason. What a great start for him and the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're going to be interesting this year, and we'll get to them later on here. But definitely, Tampa had a great week. 1-0-1. Again, you did get a loss there, but considering it's a short week, not a bad week for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then looking at number 4, moving down 3 spots. So this was the other big team that lost a little bit. Is the aforementioned Toronto Maple Leafs. 2-2-1 overall, and 0-2-0 this week. So they had 2 losses this week. A 3-2 loss at home by the St. Louis Blues, and a 7-3 loss that we just talked about by the Tampa Bay Lightning. So Toronto, everybody's now talking about Toronto's defense just isn't good enough. They just replaced guys that they lost last year. They didn't improve the defense. And unfortunately, they're kind of showing that is an issue here. Frederik Andersen may not, he's struggling here out of the gate. So what's going on with the goaltending? Who are they going to put in? Michael Hutchinson will likely get a start or two here within the next 2 weeks to give Andersen maybe some time off, or just to maybe change things up, maybe push him a little bit harder when he is in. Who knows? But Toronto, after a solid first week, definitely regressed a little bit in week 2. So at number 3, moving up 2 spots from 5 to 3, we have the Detroit Red Wings. Who would have thought the Red Wings would be number 3 in week 2? It's still very early, but nonetheless, the Detroit Red Wings are 3-1-0 this season, 1-1 this week. They just look different for some reason. This does not look like the same team we've seen over the past 5 or 6 years in Detroit. Pretty much the same lineup, but things just seem different. A 3-1 loss to the Anaheim Ducks earlier this week, but they got a 4-2 win over the Montreal Canadiens. So, a divisional opponent, Montreal's home opener. They kind of stunned the crowd there in Montreal, kept things pretty quiet in Montreal, and they were able to steal one from the Canadiens. Again, Anthony Mantha looked solid. He hit the post against the Canadiens, didn't get that goal, but it's a collective group work here by the Detroit Red Wings. They just look good. They're playing good hockey. The goaltending is suspect, but so far they've looked pretty solid there, and hopefully things are able to keep the ball rolling here for the Detroit Red Wings. Okay, so not moving in the top 2 spots, we have at number 2 the Buffalo Sabres. So the Sabres are 3-0-1 this season, 1-0-1 this week. So a pretty solid week for the Buffalo Sabres. They did lose 4-3 to the Columbus Blue Jackets in overtime earlier this week. That was their one real blemish so far on the season, was an overtime loss, so not too bad. As well as a 5-4 overtime victory over the Montreal Canadiens. So, the Montreal Canadiens kind of dropped a lot because they lost to teams like Detroit and Buffalo, and Buffalo was able to reap the benefits of it. Buffalo looks fairly solid here so far coming out of the gate. Goaltending is a little bit suspect. That's something that we're going to keep an eye on, but things have looked pretty good so far. Jack Eichel is playing very good hockey, and the Buffalo Sabres just seem to be going right in, and they're playing some really good hockey here with their new coach. And then moving up 3 spots from number 4 up to number 1, a very solid week for the Boston Bruins. 3-1-0 on the season, 1-1 on the week. A 4-3 win over the Vegas Golden Knights the other day. A very good game by the Boston Bruins. They did lose to the Colorado Avalanche 4-2 last night, but nonetheless a very good start to the season here for the Boston Bruins. They played a very hot team in the Colorado Avalanche, which we'll get to a little bit later on, and they beat a Vegas team that, maybe they're catching the Vegas Golden Knights when they're struggling a little bit, but nonetheless, it's a solid victory on the road for the Boston Bruins. They did have that one blemish this week, though, losing to the Colorado Avalanche, so they pick up a little black eye on this road trip, but nonetheless, a pretty solid start for the Boston Bruins. So just a recap of the Atlantic Division. The Ottawa Senators stay put at number 8. Florida stays put at number 7. The Montreal Canadiens move down 3 spots to number 6. The Tampa Bay Lightning move up 1 spot to number 5. The Toronto Maple Leafs slide down 3 spots to number 4. The Detroit Red Wings make a jump up 2 spots to number 3. The Buffalo Sabres stay at number 2, and the Boston Bruins move up 3 spots to number 1. And let's get to the Western Conference. All right, so jumping right into the Western Conference, we're taking a look at the Pacific Division. So at number 8, no movement here. We have the San Jose Sharks, who are 1-4 to start the season, 1-1 this week. A 5-2 loss to the Nashville Predators and a 5-4 win. So they finally get that victory, a 5-4 win over the Chicago Blackhawks. How does San Jose look? I'm kind of at a loss for words, honestly. They did bring back Patrick Marleau. They signed him to a contract, so that's good. At least you have some leadership there. But I think they need a little bit more than Patrick Marleau right now. I'm not too sure what exactly is going on, but things are not looking overly great in San Jose. The goaltending has not looked that great. They gave up 9 goals this week. Again, we've seen more goals being scored here earlier in the season. We tend to see that. As the season goes along, it kind of slows down. But as of right now, nonetheless, they gave up 9 goals for a team that's wanting to get back to that championship level and being an elite, hockey team, an elite program probably for the last, 5 or 6 years. Is this finally the year? Again, it's so early. They've only played 5 games, so we're gonna reserve judgment here. But definitely a little bit concerning here for the San Jose Sharks. The points mean just the same as they do in October as they do in May. Or May. They play in the playoffs. April, March, that kind of time. So taking a look at number 7, did not move this week either, is the Los Angeles Kings. Are 1-2 this season, 1-1 this week. A 4-3 win over a Pacific Division rival in the Calgary Flames, an overtime victory. Really one of the highlights of the week against Matthew Tkachuk and the Flames. Matthew Tkachuk and Drew Doughty definitely having a little bit of a rivalry. So they play a solid game there, and then they head to Vancouver and kind of get blown up. An 8-2 loss in Vancouver's home opener. That goal horn is probably, giving nightmares for Jonathan Quick because it went off a lot. 8-2. Oof, that's a lot of goals for the Canucks. Drew Doughty was frustrated after that game. So, again, what are the Kings this year? And I said it earlier. I think there's some issues with this roster that they really didn't address in the offseason. And unfortunately, I think it's kind of hurting them here. Okay, so not much to say about that. Number 6, moving down 1 spot, we have the Arizona Coyotes are 1-2 on the season and 1-0 on the week, beating the Vegas Golden Knights 4-1 last night. So a solid win for the Arizona Coyotes. They're getting things rolling here in Arizona. The goaltending looks very solid. Darcy Kemper looks very good for the Minnesota Wild. The Arizona Coyotes, the guys are starting to get going. Connor Garland scoring some goals. It's nice to see that. So the Arizona Coyotes are starting to put together a pretty solid season here, and hopefully they can get things going. Number 5, moving up 1 spot from last week, is the Vancouver Canucks. 1-2-0 on the season and 1-0 on the week. A 8-2 victory over the Los Angeles Kings, which we talked about. Bo Horvat named captain. JT Miller putting up a ton of goals. Elias Pettersson putting up points. This is all looking great for the Vancouver Canucks, and hopefully this is the turnaround. They did lose to the Oilers and the Calgary Flames last week, 2 divisional opponents, and they're able to turn things around against LA. So hopefully they're able to build off this momentum and have a solid week 3. And this is a little bit interesting, but moving down 3 spots is the Vegas Golden Knights. So the Vegas Golden Knights are down at number 4, 2-2 this season, 0-2 this week. So after putting up some pretty good games against the San Jose Sharks, beating them in both the home and home games, They dropped 2 games this week to the Boston Bruins by a score of 4-3, as well as a loss to the Arizona Coyotes last night in a 4-1 loss at home. Actually, no, that was on the road in Arizona. Excuse me. Don't know why I got that confused. I don't know what to say about Vegas. It's gonna happen. You're gonna go 2-0, then you're gonna go 0-2. Maybe I shouldn't have moved them down to 4, but some teams had a better week, and unfortunately, that's what ends up happening. They could have been maybe higher, maybe one higher, but the other teams in the Pacific really turned things around this week, and we'll get into that now. Taking a look at number 3, moving up one spot is the Calgary Flames. So they're 2-1-1 on the season, 2-0-1 this week. So they pick up points in all 3 of their games this week. A very solid week for the Calgary Flames. A 4-3 loss, unfortunately, to the Los Angeles Kings, which we talked about earlier, as well as a 3-2 shootout victory. So they did play well in that game. It took overtime, but they found, it took a shootout, but you find a way to get the win. You find a way to get the extra point. They're playing fairly well. I haven't watched too much of Calgary, but they're finding ways to win games. And based off the numbers, 2-0-1 this week, a pretty solid week compared to last week where they were 0-1. So good week for Calgary. So staying in place at number 2 is the Anaheim Ducks. At number 2, 3-1-0 on the season, 1-1 this week. A 4-3 or a 3-1 win over the Detroit Red Wings, as well as a 2-1 loss to the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, back and forth. They're kind of feeding off of how well they started last week. They have a 3-1 record, which is very good. They're playing some pretty solid hockey. That Pittsburgh game was a close game, but they didn't find a way to win. And the only thing that does concern me is that Pittsburgh game, because of the amount of injuries that Pittsburgh is dealing with. They're a pretty banged up team, and Anaheim couldn't find a way to get that done. So is that leading us into something in the future that that was a hint that this team could may not be as good as I have them here at number 2? We'll have to wait and see for week 3. So one of the shocks of the week here, we saw them go 2-0 to start the season, and they go 2-0 this week as well. The Edmonton Oilers moving up 2 spots to the number 1 spot here in the Pacific Division. 4-0 to start the season, 2-0 on the week, a 5-2 win over the New York Islanders, as well as a 4-3 win over the New Jersey Devils in a shootout. So 2 victories in the tri-state area for the Edmonton Oilers. They fared pretty well on this road trip. They look fairly solid here in Edmonton. James Neal is playing unbelievable hockey, and the Oilers are finding a way to get things going. They're putting up goals and They did give up 5 goals in these 2 games, but again, they did play well, and they're finding ways to score. Something we have not been able to say about Edmonton. Since before Connor McDavid got there, they've struggled to score goals, and they may have found things going this year. The Oil is. It's in the chains, and this team looks fairly solid coming out of the gate. So taking a look at the Pacific Division at number 8, the San Jose Sharks stay put. The Kings stay put at number 7. The Arizona Coyotes move down a spot to number 6. The Vancouver Canucks move up a spot to number 5. And at number 4, we have the Vegas Golden Knights, who dropped from number 1 to number 4. The Calgary Flames move up a spot to number 3. The Anaheim Ducks stay put at number 2, and the Edmonton Oilers make a jump, moving from 3 to 1 at the top of the Pacific Division. So let's take a look at the Central Division. All right, so taking a look at the Central Division, the fight for the bottom of the Central Division was won by the Minnesota Wild, who moved down from 6 to 7 this week. A pretty tough start for the Minnesota Wild. They're 0-3 to start the season, 0-1 on the week. A 5-2 loss against the Winnipeg Jets. Definitely not the start to the season that they would have liked. I don't really know what to say. I haven't watched a ton of Minnesota yet this season, but based off the score right there, 5-2 loss, there might be an issue with, again, I would never think that Dubnyk would have issues, with being the goaltender there, but maybe the defense around him just isn't that great. We know they have some really solid guys there, but they've started to break it up over the last couple of years. Zach Parise may be on the downward end of his career. Ryan Suter as well. Is that starting to hamper the team? Zuccarello, he's played well, but I wouldn't say he's been a superstar or one of those great players that they were hoping to get this offseason. So we'll see what happens. This wasn't a playoff team last year. They really didn't improve too much. Bill Guerin's got his work cut out for him in Minnesota, and hopefully they get that first victory before week 3. But as of right now, things don't look too great, especially considering how tough that division is and some of the teams toward the top. It's going to be tough for the Wild to come back from a really bad start. So hopefully they're able to get things going. At number 6, moving down one spot, the Chicago Blackhawks moved from 5 to 6 in this week's power rankings. They're 0-2 to start the season, 0-1 this week, a 5-4 loss over the San Jose Sharks. That was the Sharks' first victory. They were 0-4, and they come into Chicago. They find a way to win. Not with San Jose. San Jose knew they had to get that victory. Chicago, not much of a sample size, and a team that in San Jose that was really struggling, was able to beat the Blackhawks. So not a great look for the Blackhawks earlier this year. Hopefully they just start to get the ball rolling. They've got some changes. They had a pretty good season last year, and the expectations for this team could get back in the playoffs. They got to find a way to get a victory here because it's only 2 games in, but then it becomes 5 games and 8 games, and it starts to become really difficult to win as you get into the season. So number 5, moving up 2 spots. They are not last in the Central this week. We have the Dallas Stars. So the Dallas Stars move up 2 spots, 1-3-1 on the season, 1-0-1 in this week. So pretty solid week, a 4-3 win over the Washington Capitals in overtime. Unfortunately, ended with a 3-2 loss to the Calgary Flames. So not a great end to the week there, but Calgary looks like a pretty solid team. And they beat the Washington Capitals, who were pretty highly regarded in the Eastern Conference as one of the better teams in that conference. So they find a way to get a victory there. Dallas, the record shows 1-3-1, which isn't a great look, but they were 1-0-1 this week. So they were able to pick up a point in both their games they played. The goaltending looks all right. I wouldn't say it's been spectacular or great. The defense looks pretty solid. And the offense, we've seen some of those younger guys like Rupe Hintz come up and start to play. Radek Faksa, so hopefully they get things going there. And Radulov and that top line are firing on all cylinders. This could be a pretty solid team in Dallas. Can they follow with what they did last year? We're not too sure yet, but the results so far don't back that up. So we'll see what happens with the Dallas Stars. At number 4, staying where they were last week, are the Winnipeg Jets. They're 3-2-0 to start the season, 2-0 this week. So a pretty solid week for the Winnipeg Jets. They're continuing that Eastern swing where they finished that up. A 4-1 victory over the Pittsburgh Penguins. They play the Minnesota Wild, and they pick up a victory there, a 5-2 win. So 2 pretty dominant victories for the Winnipeg Jets. They didn't start things off overly great, losing to the Rangers and just barely beating the New Jersey Devils in a struggle. They did lose to the New York Islanders as well. So this is not the again, there's a team there. They got to figure things out. It seems like they're starting to get on the right track. There were so many distractions coming into the season about Bufflin and Connor and Line and this and that. So it looks like they're starting to get things going. The recipe to those issues is just to find a way to win. They're finding a way to win, and they don't need to make up any excuses as to why they aren't putting up results. They're just finding ways to get things done. That defense is definitely a little bit suspect and a little bit concerning, but still early in the year. They could turn things around. Morrissey being out didn't help. Kulikov, being relieved. So this is a very different looking team. We're seeing guys like Sami Niku come up and really have to prove himself. Neil Pionk as well. So this is definitely a Winnipeg team that's in a transition, specifically on the back end, and they were able to hold their own this week pretty well. So at number 3, staying put at number 3 this week are the Nashville Predators. 3-1 on the season and 2-0 this week. So they were undefeated this week, beating the San Jose Sharks by a score of 5-2, as well as the Washington Capitals in a 6-5 victory. So pretty solid week for the Nashville Predators. San Jose may not be as good of a team as everybody was hoping they would be. They feasted on a team that's struggling here out of the gate. They took advantage of that, and they beat up a pretty good Washington team who struggled this week. But again, like I mentioned earlier, they're a very highly regarded team in the Eastern Conference. So this is a team that that was a big that was a stiff competition for the Nashville Predators, a good measuring stick this week. Because the San Jose game, we just don't know where San Jose is. We have more of an idea of where Washington may be. So that was a big victory for the Nashville Predators. Considering they lost to the Detroit Red Wings last week, who looked pretty solid, but again, they lost to some teams they probably thought they could have got more success out of earlier last week. They find a way to get it done this week. St. Louis Blues at number 2, staying put at 2. 3-0-1 to start the season, 2-0 this week, a 3-2 victory in Toronto, and a 6-4 victory in Ottawa. So they're playing in Eastern Canada, and they're finding some solid, they're playing some solid teams. Toronto, very highly regarded for this season. They played well with the Maple Leafs. Everybody talks about how skilled Toronto is, and I think they're very good. They found a way to kind of carve that defense a little bit. As well as the Ottawa Senators, they took advantage of a team that's struggling out of the gate, and they were able to pick up an important victory to stay put at number 2 in the Central Division. So, you do process of elimination, and staying at number 1 in the Central Division, we have the Colorado Avalanche, 3-0 to start the season, and a solid 1-0 this week. They beat the Boston Bruins last night by a score of 4-2. Philip Grubauer has not given up a goal in the third period yet this season. He has looked very solid. He looked very solid last night against the Bruins. I got to catch some of that game. This is a pretty solid team in Colorado. We see the top guys scoring goals, Nathan McKinnon, Landeskog, Mikko Rantanen, and you see a game winner by a guy in Andre Burakovsky coming up the wing, an unbelievable play. Doing all the work himself. So, the Colorado Avalanche are finding scoring by committee, and they're finding that depth that they kind of had issues with last season. So, and as well as the goaltending being very good, with Philip Grubauer kind of, leaving, pretty much starting where he left off at the end of last season and carrying it over. So, a great start for the Colorado Avalanche. I had hopes for this Colorado team. They look very solid here. And hopefully they keep this going. They haven't been 3-0 since I believe 2015. So this is a very, this is a good team, and hopefully they're able to get things going. And if you remember, that 2015 team was also the team that just got Nathan McKinnon. They ended up winning that division that year. So that was a very solid Colorado team. So to have any comparables to that team with that Patrick Waugh team, pretty good for the Colorado Avalanche. So just to recap, the Minnesota Wild at number 7, the Chicago Blackhawks at number 6, the Dallas Stars move up to number 5, the Winnipeg Jets stay put at number 4, the Nashville Predators stay put at number 3, the St. Louis Blues at number 2, and the Colorado Avalanche hold the top of the Central Division. So that's it for Week 2's Power Rankings. Not too much change. It was a pretty short week here. Make sure to check out all our power ranking videos every Friday. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.